is Brianna Milligan, and I'm a 10th grade student at Norristown Area High School. I am also a member of the Norristown NAACP Youth Council. I am here with some of Norristown's elder African American citizens. I'm going to ask them about their experiences from segregation through the election of Barack Obama as our first African American president.
I was born in Newberry, South Carolina, 1919.
I was born in Norristown, PA, Montgomery Hospital.
I'm 104. I'll be 105 if I live to see the 18th of April.
I was born in Washington, D.C. in November 1919.
I came to Norristown as a bride in 1924.
709 Cherry Street here in Norristown, Pennsylvania.
I was born in South Carolina. The city is a little small place called Ware Shoals, outside of Greenwood County.
What are your memories of segregation?
I'm old enough so that I thought that's the way it was supposed to be.
And wherever I was at, and if I was someplace I shouldn't be, someone knew that I shouldn't be there. You're the Smith family, you're one of the Smith children, you don't belong here, go home.
When I came along, everything was segregated.
It was a matter of money, I thought, because we lived behind the people that lived in the fancy part of DeKalb Street. We went to the same school, we knew each other, we played with each other. It was just, they had a little more money.
Well, in high school, it seemed as though we always were put in the background. Very few of our class members, or Negro, we were called Negroes back then, seemed to get out of the general class.
My wife and I were standing on the corner of Erie and DeKalb Street in my early days as a lawyer. We were waiting for a bus to go out to Dr. Winters. Dr. Winters used to live out in yes, he was a dentist. And now it was a hot summer day, and Alice wanted something to drink. And we went into the drugstore, and she went into the drugstore to get a drink, and they wouldn't serve her.
And this young lady got on the streetcar, and there was an elderly black man on the car standing. He couldn't get a seat.
Margaret Simmons, I don't know whether, I know you don't want to know Margaret, but she was a friend of mine. She said during the day she was playing with this little girl. And that night, they were standing on the corner, and here comes all this Ku Klux Klan with all the white sheets and things, and this one little figure who was dressed in white, and she stepped out of the crowd and said, "Hi, Margaret." It was this little white girl that Margaret had played with all during the day. She was dressed up with the Ku Klux Klan member, and her father snatched her back into the street where they had been marching. So therefore, I mean, we knew nothing about segregation. We children, we played with each other. It was really the grown-ups' fault that this was put into these children's head that they were better than we were.
And the streetcar moved and lurched. It sort of pushed him back into her. You know how a streetcar will lurch. And she said, "You nigger."
We always had to take a back seat to most things.
And it was hard getting into colleges because, first of all, we didn't have much money, and then some colleges didn't want us anyway.
After I'd had my first child, when we went to the movies, we went every other day, different movies. We had to sit upstairs. The whites sat downstairs.
When I went to open up my office, I wanted to rent a place across the street from where I finally wound up. And the man would not rent it to me because he never said why. But I offered him a year's rent in advance, and I would pay him 1 month, so he would always stay a year ahead of time if he was afraid I wouldn't pay my rent. He wouldn't rent the building to me. It was obvious why.
When I became a technician, the housekeeper of Montgomery Hospital was supposed to furnish me uniforms, but she told me that she didn't have any to fit me and that I shouldn't be a technician anyway.
my next older brother would have gone higher in these days. Here's a good one for you. He was elected class president, but not allowed to assume the position. The principal at the assembly when the officers, class officers were running and so on. The principal said, "Sir James, you're supposed to be president, but you can't be president."
Most of the black kids were put in the general class. They didn't look at your grades or say that you should be secretary. Some of the people were lucky enough to get past it, but most of them did not.
What do you recall about the civil rights movement in the 60s and 70s?
Things were really heating up, I think, in the mid-60s, something like that.
I was a young lawyer then, beginning my practice of law, and I was more concerned on practice of law than the civil rights movement.
Well, we had a pastor named Reverend Faison who went to Crozier. That's how I met Martin Luther King. He would come to New Hope on Sunday nights for service.
The 60s and the 70s, there were groups of people, especially young people, that were really against all this stuff. And they were getting together, they were having meetings at different places.
I got involved in the civil rights. I tried to reestablish the NAACP chapter here in Norristown because it had been, it had died, and tried to get the ministers to allow us to meet in the churches.
And they didn't want to take the things that we took. So they would meet at places like, I do recall my son going to, I believe it was the Carver Center. They used to hold meetings down there. And other places, I believe we were here at the library at one time in one room. I don't know they were, I wasn't. But this was what they had started to move up the ladder a little more than we did.
And so I said, we are here to protest the treatment of these boys in the hall, where they're subject to humiliation because they're black. I said, did you look at everybody else's shoes to see why aren't there any white boys out there? I'm sure some of them must have walked in some mud. And I said to her, the bottom line is that this is not fair. I said, you know it's wrong, and I know it's wrong. And so we're just not going to take it.
Well, when we saw Martin, it would be on a Sunday night, because he would come over from Crozier to visit our pastor, Reverend Faison then. And after service, we would go out to different little restaurants where we were allowed to go to, because we couldn't go to any and every one of them. Martin Luther was a very funny person. He was the one who kept us laughing. When we saw him in the Civil Rights Movement, when he became real famous, it was a different Martin Luther King from what I knew. I knew this jolly Martin Luther, and he was always cracking decent jokes.
Well, because I was one of those who went to Washington when Martin Luther King made his memorial speech down there.
I was hurt when Martin Luther King was taken away from us. And I was very hurt. That stayed with me for a long time, and I wish that I could have done something about it, but I couldn't.
I told one principal once, I care just as much about the poor little white girl who's segregated against because her mother is not the kind of person you'd like her to be. And I don't care who it is. I will take up for her or anyone else whom I feel is discriminated against because they are but they are.
What are your feelings about Barack Obama being the first African American president?
He was God sent. God sent him at the time that we needed someone, and he sent Barack. I never could pronounce his name right.
All I do is just pray for him and ask the Lord to take care of him. I say it takes one woman to take prayer out of school, and it only takes one person to put it back.
There's a quiet excitement. I feel it more than I can express it. I was hoping that would happen in my lifetime.
In the first place, he's mixed race. He's black and white. And he struggled to make a go of it.
I have heard it at a lot of places that most black people voted for him. But now you must realize, with all the votes that he got, all of those were not black people. The white people thought along the same lines.
I want to wish him all the luck.
And a lot of people are thinking that in 4 years, he's going to straighten this whole thing out. But I hope they don't think that way, because it's going to take longer than that. But give him a chance.
It does mean a lot to me because it's something I thought I'd never see in my lifetime. If somebody said, put your money on whether or not there's going to be a black president in your lifetime, I would have lost.
I was so happy that he got to be president. I'm so sorry that my mother wasn't here, because she always said there was going to be a black president. And she always said that I wouldn't be here to see it, but we're going to have one. And we have one.
I want to thank each of our guests for speaking with us, and it was a pleasure learning about Norristown's past.